Good morning and welcome to the Overcoming Ableism session. My name is Celise Heron and I am the SIP Program Support Specialist in Riverside County Office of Ed, and I'm thrilled, excited to be here and your moderator for this breakout session. Just a few logistics before we get into the introductions of our wonderful panelists. This session will be recorded and archived on our conference agenda page after the conference for about a month. Closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. The interpretation icon is in the same area and will provide access to Spanish translation. We will ensure the ASL interpreters are spotlighted along with the PowerPoint and the presenters. Please make sure that your volume is muted to avoid background distractions while the presenters are speaking. We encourage you to engage with others in the chat when possible. And if you can, keep your camera on so we can see your fabulous faces. And with that, I'm going to introduce Larkin, O'Leary, Harmony, Harvell, and Emily King. Larkin O'Leary is the COO and co-founder of Common Ground Society. Larkin received her credential through CSU Chico in 2004 and has taught various grades from pre-K to 8th grade and has won several awards in her educational career. Since resigning to care for her son, who was born with Down syndrome, hearing loss, and a list of medical issues, Larkin has developed over 70 presentations to a wide variety of audiences about how to increase inclusion in society. She is a passionate educator turned advocate who will change the way we view and interact with people who are disabled. Next, Harmony Harvell. Harmony began her career at an elementary school where she once was an AmeriCorps mentor. Harmony then became a middle school assistant principal and an advocate for her disabled son. She is currently an elementary school principal, woohoo! And she has been a presenter with Common Ground Society since 2019. She received her credential in 2003 from Dominican University and has also earned her master's in administration. And finally, Emily King. Emily holds a BA in math and has been practicing pension actuary for over 15 years. Emily's oldest daughter was born with Down syndrome in 2012, and she has become a parent advocate and also a presenter with Common Ground Society. She's been involved in SELPA CAC meetings in both Sonoma and Marin counties, and she brings a parent perspective, very important, to discussions about education and inclusion with people with disabilities. And with that, Larkin, Harmony, and Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We are excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation and let's get started. You're going to have to, oh, there you go.
Got it? All right. So let's dive in. So Larkin and I, as was mentioned before, are teacher moms, and we have a combined experience of 34 years in education. And Emily brings a parent perspective. Her professional experience is not in education, as you heard, but we're here to tell you how, as educators and parents, we're constantly working to identify and overcome our own ableism. Larkin and I will tell you our stories as teachers who believe kids with learning differences belonged in the other class, to educators who now believe that all students can be meaningfully included.
So before we get started today, one of our best practice, we love to know who's in the room. So if you could, hop in the chat and let us know what your position is, that would be very helpful.
We have a parent and inclusion advocate. We have directors. We have coordinators for special ed. We have directors of student support services. We have teachers. We have education and curriculum supervisors, retired teachers and consultants, case managers for mental health and early childhood development. We have an inclusion director. We have an SLP. We have a parent and parent advocate. We have a school psych. We have advocates for their children. We have moms and more moms and teachers. We have coaches.
All right, great. What a wide range. And that is so wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today. We are so excited to talk about overcoming and working to overcome our ableism. So I am Larkin O'Leary. I've taught a variety of grades ranging from preschool to 8th grade. My husband is also a credentialed teacher, and we've been credentialed teachers for 18 years now. I've wanted to be a teacher ever since 4th grade. You see, up until 4th grade, I had a hard time in school. I was sent to the principal's office numerous times and had that infamous daily note home. And in 4th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Fisher, took the time to get to know me. She sat and created a connection with me. She had lunch with me and helped me with my work and spent just a few minutes each day reminding me that I was cared about in school. She didn't see me as that kid, but rather one who needed a little extra help to get back on track. And I remember her sitting down with my parents and me telling us we should try out some tutoring to help with what I now believe is ADHD. We took her advice and got help. And since those tutoring sessions, I received great grades, enjoyed school, and set out to help other kids the way that she helped me. When I was in 6th grade, Mrs. Fisher got cancer and passed away. But before she did, I made a promise to her that I would be the best teacher I could be. And that's what I set out to do. Little did I know the incredible impact she had on me.
Well, I never intended to be in education. It was actually a total coincidence. I was taking a child development class at the Santa Rosa Junior College under the assumption that someday I'll be a parent, so I should probably know some of this childhood stuff. But one day in class, an AmeriCorps recruit came in to explain that you could get some college paid for and help kids at the same time in a low-income area around Santa Rosa, California. Well, that sounded pretty good to me, so I signed up. And on the first day, I was left alone with 25 4th graders who were, let's just say, they were having a moment. And I stood on the table, got their attention, had an engaging activity, and my 20-year-old self had a Dead Poet Society moment with 4th graders. A teacher walked by and said, you should really be a teacher, except don't stand on a table because there's other issues with that. And that's just what I ended up doing. I was in AmeriCorps for 2 years. I student taught, and I got my first teaching job at the same school where I stayed for a decade.
So I've always just been an opinionated person, and coming to this specific kind of advocacy work was just kind of a twist of fate. My husband and I are math nerds who met studying math in Budapest in college. And after we graduated, he worked in finance and then went back to grad school. And I've been a pension actuary for the past 15 years, along with having a few kids. So we know that people might have a wide range of understandings of what ableism is. And before we talk more in detail about that, we're going to do an activity with you that's similar to an activity we do in schools when we're talking to students. So we're going to introduce you to our friend Megan, and we want you to keep track of the number of things that you have in common with her.
My name is Megan Desjardins. I am 33 years old. I am a wife, a mother, an author, and a small business owner. Here are a few things about me. I am one of 4 siblings. I have long brown hair and dark brown eyes. As a little girl, I loved school, making new friends, and playing with my dolls. I loved pretending to play house and was always the mom to many baby dolls. I am an outgoing person. I love to talk, and I love people. I'm competitive, especially on a good game night. I could eat sushi every day of my life. I love Christmas more than any other holiday. I love traveling, seeing the world, and trying new food. I was flying on airplanes, but a good road trip with my family is always fun. I don't like when my house is dirty, and I hate having to stop for gas. I am not a fan of white chocolate. On my days off, I love going out with my family or friends, shopping, drinking coffee, and relaxing with my kids at home with some popcorn and a good movie.
Okay, go ahead and put in the chat the number of things you had in common with our friend Megan.
9, 11, 20, 9, 13, 10, 5, 10, 15 plus. All of them, especially the sushi, 11.
And I hate getting gas too. It's like the worst thing ever. I don't know why, but I just getting out of the car and stopping when I'm on a mission, you know, it's the worst. All right, let's go ahead and meet our friend Megan. Whoop, no, yep, there we go.
Hey everyone, like I said, I'm Megan Desjardins, and I'm sure we have some similarities. But one thing that makes me different is I have SMA, or spinal muscular atrophy type 2. SMA is a neuromuscular disease that affects my entire body. Basically what it means is my muscles are not able to regenerate, therefore they're weakening over time. Even as a child, I never walked or stood along furniture. I've used an electric wheelchair since the age of 3. And now, currently, I help with all tasks during the day, whether it's eating or getting dressed or even brushing my own hair. What I want people to know about me is that despite my disability, I still am able to be a great wife, an awesome and fun mom, and a successful entrepreneur. Some of the best ways to include me would be to not make assumptions about what my abilities are, but to allow me to show you what I'm truly capable of. The last thing I would want to share with the world is that I believe that anything I set my mind to, I'm capable of accomplishing. It just might look a little different.
So we can guess by looking at her, you may not have thought that you had simple ways to connect with Megan. Well, that's ableism. But look how many things we actually have in common. The first and potentially most important part of overcoming ableism is recognizing it and acknowledging this.
Oh,
We could meet her again. So in order to talk about ableism, we thought the best way to do this was to hear it from our disabled friends. So here's a video of our friend Noah defining ableism.
So Noah, what do you know about ableism, or what do you understand about ableism? A, B, O, E, I, S. Ableism? S, W, C, H, E, R. Is where? E, E, O, E, L. People? E, T, R, E, A. Treat. T, O, T, H, E, R. Others? S, I, T, with H, E, E, I, S, A, E, I, L, I, E, I, E. Disabilities. F, A, I, R, L, Y. Unfairly. Ableism is where others treat people with disabilities unfairly. Stop.
So Noah said a letterboard is the alphabet on a piece of laminated cardboard or a stencil. I use it by pointing to the letters of the words I want to express. I can talk, but my words come out not what I intend. I am an unreliably speaking autistic person. I need a CRP or communication regulation partner to hold the letterboard and keep my mind focused and on task while spelling. That person also reads aloud the words Noah is spelling and helps him to communicate. So we also have Megan back to tell us about how she has a lived experience with ableism.
I don't believe that ableism is ever intentional. I believe that ableism happens when assumptions are made. I know that I have had many times in my childhood and even adulthood when people, whether it be teachers or waitress or employers, have made assumptions about me and my abilities. I believe that the way that we can avoid ableism from happening is to not assume, but to ask questions and to accommodate whenever necessary.
Oh, yep. So why are we up here speaking? Well, over here speaking about this, you may be wondering. My husband and I have an 9-year-old son named James. He is a sassy, fun-loving jokester who happens to have Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a chromosomal anomaly where there are 3 copies of the 21st chromosome instead of 2. There are actually 3 types of Down syndrome. I didn't know that before having my son. James has the most common type, trisomy 21.
And my husband and I have August Nolan Harvell, a kiddo who loves music, books, puzzles, and more than anything, being outside. He was diagnosed with a speech delay at 18 months and autism at 2. I decided never to identify what part of the spectrum that August is on, high, low, or number rating scale. I don't want to put an expectation on him, and I still don't know it. So I'd rather you just get to know him as the person he is, with autism just being part of him, not all of him.
So my daughter, Megan, I suppose is kind of on the Venn diagram between James and August. She has both Down syndrome and autism. We found out that she would have Down syndrome when I was 18 weeks pregnant with her and autism when she was between 3 and 4. I thought that I knew what autism was before I figured out that Megan has autism, but I really like this framing of it, that autism has to do with differences in behavior or how we interact with the world, and those typically manifest through differences in the sensory system. Autism has to do with differences in socialization and differences in communication.
Since having our kids, our perspective on just about everything has changed. From very passionate teachers who loved their students, who spent hours after school designing fun lessons and attending trainings, yet were afraid of teaching the outliers because we didn't think we could do it, to someone who is advocating for all children to be educated together. And this metamorphosis is easily described by my saying, you don't know what you don't know until you know. So let's learn. We believe the best way to learn about others is to create connections with them by learning about where they come from, because connection is key to inclusion. So let's connect. Here's a little background on me. As a soon-to-be mom, my life was pretty normal. We did the typical baby showers, eating lots of ice cream, nursery decorations, not being able to see my toes. We had our birth plan, our after birth plan. I had it all figured out. I was going to have my baby and return to school as a full-time teacher, like every one of my colleagues did, because it was my passion and my first love after all. And then we had James. It was a chaotic birth where I'll spare you the details, but I can liken it to a scene in Beauty and the Beast where they began singing Be Our Guest. Everything around me was in motion, and James Allen O'Leary entered this world via emergency C-section on St. Patrick's Day with a tiny little red tuft of hair. They told me to pull back my shirt and get ready for some skin to skin, only he never came. James let out one cry and that was it. So they rushed him off to the NICU with my dazed husband following. And I laid on the table wondering what the heck happened. I didn't eat the cheese or lunch meat they warn you about. I didn't drink or smoke. And I even gave up caffeine 6 months before trying to get pregnant. And, you teachers out there know that is an extra feat, right? So what was going on with my little guy? What seemed like hours later, I was finally wheeled in to meet my son. The doctors surrounded my husband and me as they told us the news. I'm sorry to say it looks like James has some markers to indicate he has Down syndrome. And I'd like to make a note there that the very first person to meet my son was sorry that he existed. First is the hole in his heart. Your son will need to have open heart surgery. We're not sure how soon, so we're taking him by ambulance to San Francisco right away. The doctor kept on talking, but I didn't hear a word he was saying. Down syndrome, heart issues, but he was only 6 days early. I had done everything I was supposed to during this pregnancy and nothing I shouldn't. Clearly, he was wrong. Well, the doctor wasn't wrong. And fast forward 9 years, 4 major surgeries and 26 other minor surgeries, hundreds of days in the hospital, countless doctors and therapy visits, and here we are. My son is alive and thriving and entering the educational world. And just as he was entering, I was sort of forced to take a break. With all of his hospital stays, I ran out of sick days to use. My district was beyond supportive of my attempts to claw at my job, but there was just no way. Writing subplans from the emergency room and the PICU while my son was fighting for his life just became too overwhelming. Teaching is my passion, my hobby, my first love. And telling my students that I wasn't coming back was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I had to do it 3 times since James was born due to his medical issues. It never got any easier. They were my kids. But now he's walking, running, thriving, jumping, talking, signing, and keeping his teachers on their toes. He gets that from his dad. And I have the opportunity to reflect, learn, and grow. And that's just what I'm doing.
A year later, I was giving birth to my son, August. I shared the same experience as Larkin. Pregnancy was new to me and it was wonderful. I was 39 when I got pregnant, but I was healthy in all ways, physically, emotionally, financially, and in my relationship. And my husband and Eric and I actually were not expected to get pregnant, and we weren't actually trying. But even though I was, quote, an older mom, I didn't have anyone at Kaiser ever make me feel different. I never had any special testing. I took all the classes and it was a huge success. But when I went and had checks for abnormalities, like you're supposed to, I can speak, supposed to, my little fetus came back all good to go. Well, August came into the world healthy and we were happy new parents and we were in the bliss of parenthood. Look at that. Okay. Well, August babbled throughout his early development, but real words never formed. So we would go to his wellness checks and the doctor would ask how many words he knew. This pattern continued every 3 months with the same answer, not even close. So we referred to a specialist for speech. Long story short, our trip to San Francisco Kaiser was what I thought was for a speech assessment. I dressed August up so cute, collared shirt and jeans. He was adorable. The assistant came down and we went to another floor and we walked down a very long hallway. But when I turned to see the brown door to our parent destination, this sign was overhead: Autism Spectrum Disorder Center. I am very confused. We're probably just using the space, overflow, right? So after assessing August for about an hour with him playing with a therapist and me looking through the 2-sided glass and talking to a clinical psychologist, he says that it is simply not normal for a child as young as August to play on his own while adults talk for as long as we did. He has autism. I was stunned, thinking I heard him wrong. Eric, my husband, cried as I went into teacher problem-solving mode. What do? Let's fix this. He gave me his business card and he said, I'll send you a full report and a letter will come in the mail with resources. Does he know what he just did to my world? I asked about the spectrum. Where was he? Never mind. I don't want to know. I don't know. Just tell me how to fix this, because that's what I learned as a teacher. You fix. They simply can't say that he has a disorder. I hated this doctor even more, but I plastered my best smile on my face, cleaned up his toys, shook his hand, and left. I got myself together, and I'll never forget in the car, Eric saying to me as I cried, he's still our son, and I cried all the way home. His sweetness, love, and ease masked it all, but in retrospect and experience, I see the autism markers much clearer now. Yet he's still my son. He loves being outside still. He loves listening to music, and now we can add singing music. And nowadays, he also wrestles with his sister.
So as I said before, I found out that Megan would have Down syndrome when I was 18 weeks pregnant with her. It was a routine ultrasound, and she had a lot of flags for some sort of chromosomal abnormality. And based on just the ultrasound results, it was clear that she either had Down syndrome, trisomy 18, or trisomy 13. Ultimately, for Megan, Down syndrome was kind of the best case scenario health-wise, and we were very fortunate to have a broadly positive diagnosis experience. We happened to be at a large university research hospital to have that ultrasound. And because of that, we were able to meet with a genetic counselor within an hour of the ultrasound and have an amniocentesis right away and have really supportive professionals around us who were able to give us positive fact-based advice. So since she's my oldest and I spent most of my pregnancy knowing that she would have Down syndrome, I think that that has really made it so that I never really developed much of a parental identity outside of parenting a child with a disability. It's kind of been my experience with parenthood all along. I was really surprised to find out that Megan had Down syndrome. I was 26 when I found out, and I just thought it wasn't something that I had to worry about. This is kind of interesting because I grew up with an aunt with Down syndrome. This is my Aunt Judy. She was born when my grandma was 18. And the kind of Down syndrome that Megan has is not hereditary. So it's just a fluke that Megan also has it. But I think it's helpful for my family and I to know that Megan was just part of our family, and that if Judy could be like that, Megan would be too. So between Megan's initial preschool assessments when she was almost 3 and when she started preschool at age 3, she stopped saying almost all of the words that she had learned. She changed the way she communicated. And between that time and when she was about 5, I came to the realization that she has autism. I was in a lot of ways the complete opposite of Harmony, walking into the same Kaiser autism clinic. I sort of marched in with Megan and I said, she has autism. You can do whatever you want, but I'm not leaving until you diagnose her. So Megan having autism took me a while to sort of wrap my mind around, but over and over I come to the same realization that that Harmony came to, that Megan's just my kid. Having autism doesn't change how affectionate she is, how much she loves music, or her amazing smile. And when I first found out that Megan would have Down syndrome, and again, when we were coming to terms with her having autism, I wish I could have told myself how incredibly normal our life would feel. There are things that are hard, but by and large, we're just a normal family like everyone else. Today, Megan is a super fun and happy 10-year-old, and she is in almost exclusively in a special day class.
As teachers prior to having our kids, we hate to admit that we weren't the best teacher to all kids. Now, don't get us wrong. We spent many 14-hour days, weekends, and evenings after those 14-hour days perfecting our passion. We loved creating challenging curriculum to keep our kids engaged. We loved all of our students and truly wanted what was best for them. We took all the professional development offered and attended many conferences. We thought we were doing a great job, and we even won a few awards, but looking back now, we realize where we went wrong. We had a different mindset. We didn't understand inclusion and how it could possibly work. I'm just one teacher, we'd think. How in the world am I supposed to reach those kids that are way above grade level while also reaching those that are so far below? How can we manage behaviors we didn't understand? And shamefully, we'll admit that our mindset was, those kids belong over there. The passion was there. The love of kids and learning and teaching was definitely there, but our training was not, and our system wasn't set up to support us with anything else. We'd be overwhelmed when we find out 2 weeks before school started that we'd have a kid with special needs, and we were scared as hell. I mean, how can they expect this of us? It just doesn't make sense for a GATE student to be in the same class as a student with Down syndrome. They're so different. But now we ask the question, are they really? Let's be honest. All children are different. All people are different. I don't believe there is another person on earth with the exact same strengths and challenges that I have or you have. There is no real normal. It's a myth we need to dispel to be able to reach all of our students, because it is possible.
It is possible to reach a multitude of learners when you're able to figure out what motivates them and their learning style. This can seem like an overwhelming task when you have 20 students, let alone 30, let alone 180. However, teachers have the knowledge and the support when they have the support they need to teach our ever-evolving neurodiverse population. Success will be found for them and our neurotypical children. As educators, we loved every one of our students, but we didn't have the skills. We desperately wanted success, but we didn't know how to attain it. We didn't realize when we got the news that a child had autism, it wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Every child's unique with or without an IEP, with or without a diagnosis. Every child learns differently. To best teach each child, we must understand their unique learning profile, which can be difficult when you have so many students. This is why using a UDL approach to teach is vital, and it actually makes the job easier. So UDL is based on 3 principles. Number 1, providing multiple means of engagement, which means stimulating their interest and motivation. Number 2, providing multiple means of representation, which means presenting the content in different ways, such as visually or orally. And number 3, providing multiple means of action and expression, giving students different ways to express what they know. Prior to having our kids, we already unknowingly did a lot of these things, as we're sure many teachers do already.
So the title of tonight's presentation is this morning presentation is Overcoming Ableism. We've talked briefly about UDL and why we need it to teach all learners. It's hard sometimes to admit it's our own ableism that gets in the way. So we're going to start. You're muted. I'm sure you sound great, but
I do. I just need to slow down at a moment. Dan caught my, when I'm nervous, I speak fast. I will slow down for our interpretation. My apologies. Don't translate that. So when August received the diagnosis of autism, I didn't want to tell a single human being. In fact, I received the news just as we were returning to school, and I had to leave some in-services and staff meetings to take specialist phone calls for the next step. I avoided saying what was happening to my colleagues when they would ask me. I justified my response that doctors think August has autism, but I'm still looking for a second opinion because August looked normal. So I thought no one would notice. And when I would mention what the doctor thought, many of my well-meaning friends and colleagues only further perpetuated my assumption that all autism is the same. He can't have autism because he has great eye contact, and he can't have autism. He's so sweet-natured. I was falling victim to the ingrained ableism trap.
I fell victim to the same thing. My daughter is very affectionate and she loves interacting with adults. When she was a baby and a young toddler, I sometimes thought to myself how glad I was that she had Down syndrome instead of something really sad like autism, where she wouldn't want to connect with me or wouldn't care about me. And I think she was diagnosed later than she might have been because I thought that she was too affectionate and friendly to have autism.
I assumed that people with disabilities like Down syndrome couldn't learn like typically developing people. I thought all people with Down syndrome were the same. And I truly thought all people with Down syndrome were happy all the time. I vividly remember when the Down Syndrome Association came to visit me in our home after we finally got out of the NICU. And I cringe when I think about the fact that I said, well, at least all people with Down syndrome are always happy. Boy, was I wrong. He experiences all the emotions and sometimes all at the same time. Here are some examples in education.
So Megan frequently turns her head away from people, like in this photo. And when we were working with early intervention therapists, we worked a lot on calling her attention back when she did this, making sure that she was looking at whatever we were doing.
I had an autistic student in my class. I was dead set on him taking notes. This was in 5th grade, and he was brilliant upon brilliant when it came to math, and he was an auditory learner. The lessons I was teaching, he already knew and was able to take in what he didn't simply by listening. But in my mind, I thought he really needed to learn how to take notes like the rest of the class. Why should he be any different? Why should he get away, right, with just drawing during note-taking time? This is ableism.
As a gen ed teacher, I had an SDC student who spent 40% of his time in my classroom. I was not given too much direction on what to do with him, but that he just needed socialization. So what I did was I put him in the most unobvious seat and gave him the easiest assignment just to occupy his time rather than actually instruct him. I was appeasing the SDC teacher, and though I liked the student, he simply wasn't mine. So when he was with me, let's make it easy for him and let's make it easy for me. I saw those kids as the helpee and I was the helper. Truthfully, because they had an IEP or they were coming from another classroom, they weren't my responsibility and they weren't truly my kids.
So there is a question in the chat about how it's going in school. So we can pause and answer the question. For my son is fully included in his 2nd grade class. And what's great about his team is it's at the school that my husband and I both used to work at, and it's in our district. So we know all the people. He's actually in my old classroom I used to teach in, and we can have open and honest conversations about the things that are working and the things that aren't working. And this communication has been key to him being fully included. He also has an inclusion specialist who was hired last year for our district, and she is incredible. She can reach out to me and we can work together to best fit his needs. And he's been thriving, making years growth, which has been incredible. I don't know if either of you want to speak to that or if we should continue.
August he's at my school. I'm the principal and I tell him what to do. I made the choice to actually keep him in his, he's in a class called the Rincon Valley Partnership, which is a severe moderate special education class. He's been there since kindergarten with the same teacher for his needs. It's what he needs, and he's really thrived. He is 40% mainstreamed into the gen ed classroom. So he's in 2nd grade and he mainstreams into 1st grade. And I've worked really actively with, along with his teacher, with the gen ed teacher to really make those mainstreaming minutes meaningful. So we've kind of transitioned away from just play center time, because from my own experience, I learned to some more thoughtful engagement with things that he needs. So he's working on writing the letter A was his goal in the gen ed classroom when they work on writing. And that really, I would agree with Larkin, we're able to do that through conversation and collaboration. So we talk a lot outside of the IEP, just making sure that we have inclusion practice. And my goal is to increase his gen ed time as I see appropriate.
So I will say, first of all, Megan loves school. So that for me has been the most important piece of her education, that she's happy in school and she loves it. I don't really have a lot of experience with inclusion. Megan has never had any meaningful inclusion. I've noted, my observation of the system is that for parents who are not teachers and aren't embedded in the school environment, it's really challenging. Especially with these kids who have really, Megan has 11 or 12 specialists at all of her IEP meetings. So for Megan, she's not really meaningfully included. We work on this stuff so that hopefully someday students like her will have the opportunity to have meaningful inclusion.
I see another question in the chat. Let's get through a little bit more of the presentation, and Emily just answered your
Just
previous
answered
question.
it.
Yeah. It's
Um,
completely different, completely different and much harder.
Well, I think we'll finish and then we have a nice chunk of time for Q&A at the end.
Hopefully we'll get there. So as you just saw that video, that was my son at 2.5 years old, matching the words to the pictures, right? And this was my mindset shift, my changing factor, and my mind was blown and my world was forever changed, right? Watching him understand how to do that at 2.5 years old, really shifted my mindset in what might be possible here. And I still think about how I forced that student to take notes about something he already understood. And I realized how absurd it was that I used his disability against him, right? If he wants to be included, he'll be like everyone else. What does that even mean, right? So each and every one of our children are so vastly different.
So obviously I was wrong about Megan. She is super sweet and affectionate and loves connecting with people, and she has autism. It took me a little bit of time to figure out what was going on in the picture where she was turning her head. Megan only has hearing in one ear, and so she's turning her good ear toward music in that picture. Megan has had her eyes don't align well, and so her eyes often don't even point in the same direction. So disrupting her auditory attention to redirect her eye gaze is really unhelpful for her.
And I was wrong. And I'm just going to say that's really hard for me to say as an educator. I don't like saying that. But if I don't tell anyone that he has autism, guess what? It's going to go away and no one's going to know the difference. Well, we know that fact is not true. And I was ashamed of his disability, completely ashamed. When autism is a part of him, took me a long time to say, and not all of him, but it really makes him this unique, outstanding human being that he has his ear tugs, hello, is that not the cutest, hand flaps, stomping feet, even when the stomping feet drive me crazy, but all of it, it's him. So, and the student that I excluded, I did that, had his own beauty that I had to tap into so others could learn and thrive from him.
So as we finish up our presentation, we want you to reflect on your own teaching and think about some experiences that maybe you could have done better. And as you continue on in your teaching and your administrating and your speeching, what are some things that you can take away from this and keep in the back of your mind as you're working with students? It's just so important. So those are stories of us as individuals with our own personal ableism, but the system as a whole has built-in inequities and structures because of ableism, right? And as participants in this system, all of us, teachers, parents, administrators, therapists, all of us are the ones who have to make the change. We are the ones who have to stand up and identify what it is we need to be successful and advocate for that.
So let's talk about recognizing and identifying ableisms in a school structure. So we understand that just the work itself is tiring in whatever form that you're doing that. And it's really hard. Also, we're out from the pandemic. Some students are still dealing with that, but we also know whatever additional trauma that they've experienced. So it's impossible to take in any knowledge when you're really just worried about what does the next day look like. So if we're building a school system from scratch, which this team would love to do, we will someday, we would definitely do it differently. So we simply have got to change our aim. So one of the biggest things we can do is change our mindset.
When we have these super traditional ideas of what ableism is, and how when we have these super traditional ideas of what it looks like in the classroom, we need to check our ableism. As participants in the system, it can be hard to not get defensive, right, about the way that traditional expectations might work well for most students. But what we're asking you all to do, and what we're always working to do, is think about creating a classroom and school environment where everyone belongs. So we love to play this quick little video from Shelley Moore about changing our aim.
Hi, my name is Shelley Moore, and I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. As Canadians, we have a reputation for finding and embracing the strength in our diversity. This value, however, hasn't been reflected in our classrooms, which still segregates students by ability, especially students with developmental disabilities. There's a gap in our understanding about what we know inclusive education to be philosophically versus what we understand and the importance of understanding inclusion in our practice. This is the question I'm trying to answer in my research, is how can we find the value in the day-to-day practice in our classrooms in terms of inclusive education? So how am I going to explain this to you? Now I can sit here and try and describe this, or we can have a little bit more fun. Why don't we go bowling? So let's talk about bowling. You have 10 pins, you have 2 balls, and you have a lane. The goal is to knock down as many pins as you can. But if you don't get them all, it's okay because you have another chance. But when I bowl and roll the ball down the middle and I don't knock them all down, what often ends up happening to me is that there's 2 pins left standing on either end and they stare at you. It's the 7-10 split, and it's the hardest shot in bowling. How is bowling like teaching? The ball was the lesson, the pins are the kids. We aim for the middle, we do the best we can. The pins that are left standing, we often have another chance to kind of get to them, but at the end of the day, those 2 pins that are staring, looking at you, are kids who need the most support and are kids who need the most challenge. So we end up choosing one, and the other one is left standing. I just took all the fun out of bowling. Now, I don't know how many times you've watched professional bowling, but I spent an afternoon watching professional bowling. And let me tell you, there was not one bowler who rolled that ball down the middle of the lane. They threw the ball down the lane at a curve. And I was actually really curious about this. So I called up a professional bowler. He was so excited. I don't think he gets a lot of calls about education. He said the reason why the ball has to enter at a curve is because you will knock down more pins and create a bigger domino effect if you enter at that angle. But in order to do that, you have to change your aim. In order to knock down the most pins with one shot, he aims for the pins that are the hardest to hit. Let's just let this sink in for a second. We are taught to teach the head pins. We are not taught to teach to the kids who are the furthest and the hardest to get to, the kids with autism, the kids with Down syndrome. The part that's critical here, and it really aligns with Universal Design for Learning, is that so often the supports that we design for those kids on the outside of the lane are actually supports that all of the kids need. This is the part we need to understand if inclusive education is going to move forward in Canada. How can we find this value of diversity in our classrooms between the students? This is not just important for the outside pins, but it's critical for every single one of us. And just think, all we need to do is change our aim. Look how bowling changed education.
All right. We love how she talks about strength in our diversity and changing our aim, right? The world needs all kind of learners, and why we are not honing in on those strengths and those things that people are interested in learning about to scaffold the deficits is something we really need to think about in education.
So sometimes when we have these conversations, especially with people like you all who are on board with inclusion, right? You're here because you're on board. We sometimes hear this frustration. Well, obviously I'm on board with this, but all of these other things have to happen. And we know that. Yes, there are so many other things that have to happen. So we sort of came up with this model for how we think about inclusion. And in this bridge, mindset is the keystone. So we have to have all of the other pieces. We have to have all of the pieces of UDL. We have to have a belief that there are no prerequisites for inclusion. We have to have really well-written, robust IEP teams. But in all of it, the mindset is the piece that can't be missing. So we just hope that by sort of cementing the mindset piece, you can understand that the rest of it all has to come from there.
So at Common Ground Society, we share the stories of our lives to educate and empower our community to be more compassionate, accepting, and inclusive of people with disabilities. Common Ground Society ensures that all families feel a sense of belonging through meaningful connections and local support. We offer presentations to a wide variety of people and like yourselves. So thank you for being here today. We are going to stop screen sharing. We only have a couple minutes left for questions. I'm going to also put in the chat. I don't know why I can't stop screen sharing. I'm going to put in the chat our contact information. So if we are unable to get to your question today, you can contact us at any time and reach out. Nothing is ever off the table. We're always happy to answer questions. So, Harmony, did you see any questions?
I do, one from Taylor. It says, has California explored the possibility of being inclusive with age and possibly stop segregating students by age? Is there a research-based reason why we do this?
So I've asked a number of times about, so my daughter is really small, and right now she's gonna go into 6th grade next year. If she could push into a TK class developmentally, that would be, sorry, I should say academically, that would be perfect for her. Developmentally, it might be a little bit different. But I think that what's tricky about that is that because retention has been used to because retention has been shown to not work for a lot of students, and because of disproportionate identification of certain groups of students with disabilities, I think that just becomes super tricky. But yes, I wish there were more options to have more diversity of ages in learning settings.
And another question from David, is ableism minimized by us starting with diversity within education?
I have never thought about ableism until it was something that affected me. And I am telling you, teaching is everything to me. Kids are everything to me. My job as a teacher and loving my students, I can't I can't tell you enough how much it's a part of who I am, and it's never something I thought about until it affected me. And this is why I think it is so important that we talk about it, because it's not something that we talk about. And even as an educator who loved all of my kids, right? It wasn't something that I understood when we're talking about diversity. I mean, just yesterday I was listening to our county superintendent talk about all means all, and but not one time did she mention any disabled kids at all.
Anna, sorry, Emily, unless you want to say something to that question, I was going to go to the next one.
No, go ahead.
Anna asked, do you guys help parents advocate in IEPs?
So we provide like peer-to-peer support sort of in a more broad parenting sense. I think we sort of rely on Matrix to provide like direct parent advocacy training. But we do find that having a robust social network of other parents who've been through it is very helpful.
That's anything in the chat. People also are allowed to unmute and ask any questions.
So I'm going to go ahead and put our contact information in the chat. We do school presentations talking about a multitude of disabilities. Our first presentation focuses more on visible disabilities. Our second presentation focuses more on invisible disabilities. We do parents and teachers. Obviously, you're all here. Do you feel that since you worked in education prior to this, that it helped you advocate for your student? Absolutely. I think being able to sit on both sides of the table, and Harmony's sat on 3 sides of the table now, it really helps you to be empathetic to all of the different sides and understand that, like, teachers don't get into education because they want to, for the money or for any other reason besides they love kids. And being able to keep that in the back of my mind when I'm advocating for my son has been really helpful.
I would agree. Now I have the additional lens of administration, and most administrators or directors came up through an education, and we have the same intention. We have a really flawed system. We have a really systemic flawed system, and people are really trying to work hard to create these inclusive practices, and really, like I said, join us to break the system apart, and then we'll rebuild it slowly. But we're trying to rebuild it while it's still running, which makes it challenges, but everyone has good intent. But open communication and honest communication and kind communication is always what I found best practice.
And presuming positive intent. All right. Well, with that, I see there's another question. But I also see that we're almost done with time, and I see Celeste. Should I do it? Should I? You're the boss.
I wish we have about 45 seconds to the end of our session.
So any ideas, suggested organizations that do effective advocacy work for inclusive practices on a district site-wide level? Sorry, translators, it's in the chat. We are happy to chat further. Feel free to email me and we can talk further about different places that you could go to help. I know Supporting Inclusive Practices is a great organization with that. Yeah.
Yes, we are. We do provide some support. You can also reach us on our website. And so we are at the 11 o'clock hour. And I just want to say thank you so much, Larkin, Harmony, and Emily, for sharing your beautiful experiences and your journey and your continued journey through overcoming ableism. I'd like to thank everyone in attendance for your allyship to our students with disabilities and their family. It is our mission to grow our educational system to innovate, include, and impact outcomes positively for all from birth to adulthood and beyond. All of the presentation slides and resources can be accessed in the session description section on the VFAIR's agenda page. Now be sure to join DJ B Diamond from 11 to 11:10, getting with all of the great music. The next breakout sessions start at 11:10. That can be accessed through the VFAIR's platform. You can also connect in the social lounge with like-minded attendees and post on social media using the hashtag SIPCON 2023. And there is no breakout room survey. However, we do have a survey for the conference, and that is in the chat. Please make sure that you complete the survey. And we again want to thank Larkin, Emily, and Harmony for your powerful message and sharing with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.